So, thank you all for coming. I'd like to welcome you to the Taos County Democratic Party's gubernatorial debate. And I'm honored that Alan Weber, Gary King, Linda Lopez, and Lawrence Royale are present with us tonight. Because we are holding this debate so early in the season, Howie Morales is stuck in committee and sends his regards and promises to come to Taos very, very, very soon. But that's what life is like if you're a senator. Okay? So we'll have Howie at some other point in time. All right, so what I'd like to just let you know is that tonight's debate is being videotaped. And this debate will go on Channel 22, Taos' public access, thanks to UNM-Taos. So tell all your friends to watch this debate so that they can meet these amazing people. And I can honestly say that everyone sitting here is an amazing person committed to making the world a better place. So in a minute, I'm going to give them 2 minutes to introduce themselves to you. And the way that this debate began was I had actually a lot of teachers and a lot of economic development folks asking me to bring these people here. Because education and economic development and why can you meet Susanna Martinez are probably the top 3 topics on people's mind here in Taos. So that's how this debate started. We put out an email to pull in questions. I have some questions for the candidates, and we'll go through a more formal process. And then I'm going to open up the microphone for all of you in the audience, at least the last 20 minutes, if not a little more. And so you can ask these folks either a follow-up question or a question that's focused on something different. Like, I know that there are some questions here about water quality. Okay? Okay. The other thing that I find really challenging in politics these days is how do you get to know somebody? Now, I realize that the debate format is a challenge, and I realize that you're being videotaped and recorded on Cultural Energy's radio station, which, again, yes.
Channel 18 TV.
Channel 18 TV. Thank you. But if you can, when you introduce yourself, if you could, share your political experience, what is unique about you as a person, as a professional, and as a candidate, and what are the most important leadership issues or policy and legislation that you have been involved in the last 5 years. Okay, we'll go forward with what you'll do after your introduction, but let's talk about what you've done in the last few years. And I mean, this is my personal challenge. Taos is a really pretty serious place, right? So go ahead and be serious tonight. And we also care about people. We would like to know your heart and soul. So, who would like to begin? Okay, Lawrence.
Well, Erin, thank you very much, and I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. It's great to be in Taos, and it's nice to see so many citizens interested in knowing a little bit about who we are as candidates. My name is Lawrence Royale, and I am a native New Mexican, born and raised in New Mexico. I grew up in a small town along the banks of the Rio Grande, between the pueblos of Coxti and Santo Domingo. I was raised by a single parent. My mother raised 7 children when my father was killed in a car accident coming home from work one evening. He was killed by a drunk driver. So I know firsthand what it's like to live in poverty. I know what it's like to go to bed hungry, and I know what it's like to go to school wearing other people's clothes. But what I also know is that those times may have been difficult for us as a family, but we worked together as a community. And I had lots of family and friends who helped us grow up. So I dedicated my life to what I knew, which was helping people. I've been in public service for 35 years. I worked in Washington for Senator Bingaman back in the late 80s, and I was a city manager of Albuquerque. But what I've done in the last 5 years, more importantly, is I was a presidential appointment. President Obama appointed me to be the head of the Farm Service Agency a year and a half ago. I worked with farmers and ranchers all over New Mexico, including up here in northern New Mexico, working on water projects, working on sustainability projects with our farming and ranching communities. So I have had the opportunity to work in urban areas, managing the largest city in the state, billion-dollar budgets, on major initiatives, major projects. And I've had a chance to work in rural communities as well. I was also the president of the New Mexico Green Chamber of Commerce. For over 3.5 years, we guided a project that brought small businesses that believe in people, planet, and profit, and bringing the triple bottom line so that we can make sure that our local communities can sustain themselves. We had initiatives like Buy Local campaigns so that small businesses in New Mexico can continue to have exist in New Mexico. We broadcast that we worked on the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument as a way to bring economic development to northern New Mexico. We'll have an opportunity to learn more, but thank you so very much for having me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and introduce myself to Los. My name is Linda Lopez. My son is here with me tonight. He is my travel companion. I'm a single mom, so he may be on this other side, but you'll get to know him, and you'll get to know you as time proceeds. I was born in Albuquerque. My parents are from Socorro County and Torrance County. My dad's from a land back community there in the Monsanto Mountains. My mother, of course, is from a ranch down in southern Socorro County. Both are deceased. I'm the youngest of 3 children. My oldest sister is 70. So there's an interesting discussion between she and I over the years about who, where, and what. I'm a small business owner. I have owned my business off and on over the last couple of decades. I am a state senator. I represent Senate District 11, which is the South Valley of Albuquerque. I serve as the chairwoman of the Senate Rules Committee in the New Mexico State Senate. I've also served as caucus chairman for the Senate Democrats. I serve as chair of the Democratic Party in Bernalillo County for 1 term. And for those of you who are in a position as precinct chair, ward chair, chairwoman of the party, I give my kudos to you. Bachelor's degree, master's, and bachelor's from the College of Santa Fe. I did attend law school for 3 semesters. I chose to leave to take care of my mom. Those are the values that I bring with me because it is part of who I am, that we have to honor and work with and take care of our elders. I love to ski when we have snow. We keep praying for some more snow. I love to dance and have a great time with music, and of course with my son, being a single mom, there's always something new to learn about our school system, which we'll have a chance to talk about. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, good. I'm Gary King. I'm also a native New Mexican. I was born in Albuquerque, as many of us were, but raised in Moriarty, New Mexico, so also a small town. I think not as small as Lawrence's town. But I went to school at New Mexico State University. I got a PhD in organic chemistry at the University of Colorado, and my law degree at the University of New Mexico. And when I completed my law degree, I moved back to Moriarty and opened a law office in Moriarty called King and Stanley. I had a partner, and we practiced general practice of law. Later on, I went to work for an environmental engineering company as a scientist and a lawyer. For a small environmental engineering company owned by a fellow named Ed Romero, who eventually became the ambassador to Spain. But I worked for Ed for 10 years. I served 12 years during that time period in the legislature. After I was in the legislature, I served 2 years in the Clinton administration as an assistant secretary at the U.S. Department of Energy, primarily focusing on the cleanup of the legacy waste from the Cold War. And then I actually ran for Congress in southern New Mexico against Steve Pierce, which I'm proud of, but a very difficult district in that case, and was not successful there, but came back and ran for Attorney General here and have been the Attorney General for the last 7 years. I'm term limited, so I'm at the end of my term. Since I've been Attorney General for 7 years, I can talk a little bit about what I've done for the last 5 years, and there's 2 minutes is not enough to talk about a lot of statewide issues, but I thought I'd talk a little bit about what I've done for Taos County. One of those is that a couple of years ago, we took on the big banks and brought a lawsuit and recovered a multi-billion-dollar settlement, which brought about $100 million worth of resources to New Mexico to keep New Mexicans in their homes. We brought a lawsuit against Molecor Corporation for damages that they did to our natural resources here, and are here to hold them accountable for damage to our natural resources. I just finished a case representing a judge on the issue of same-sex marriage in New Mexico that resulted in our Supreme Court ruling that same-sex marriage was non-violent same-sex marriage violated the protection clause in New Mexico. We'll have a chance to talk about a lot of other things, but thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be
Thank you, Mary. Thanks, everybody, for coming and for this opportunity to introduce myself and to be part of this panel. My name is Alan Weber. I guess the question was, what's unique about me? What's my political experience? I am a lifelong Democrat. My mom and dad were FDR Democrats, and I was raised to believe that the democratic values of America are profoundly important, and we all have an obligation to find ways to make a contribution and make a difference to leave a place better than we found it. One of my most formative experiences as a young person was in 1963 when the Reverend Martin Luther King came to my congregation and gave a sermon on the eve of the March on Washington for Equal Rights and Justice. And I remember vividly his sermon about how we all have an obligation for equal justice, opportunity, dignity, and respect for everybody. And I've used that as a guiding light in my life. I've never run for office before, although I have worked in federal, state, and local government. I've served 3 governors from Oregon to Michigan to Massachusetts. I wrote speeches for Michael Dukakis, although I did not tell him to get into that tank and wear that helmet. I guess what makes me unique is my background as an entrepreneur. Among all my colleagues, I've started a business, I've grown the business, I've found people to work with, I chose the talent, I rewarded the talent so that when our company was sold, everybody who worked there got a part of the sales price, because I believe that those values are important. I believe that running an organization teaches you how to really evaluate people, and also that their value is more important than just making money. But the real story when you start a company is how you make a difference and how you make a better life for people. And we'll talk more about this as the evening progresses. Thank you.
I'm going to go back down the road and give you 30 seconds. If there's something else you really want to let these people know about you. Okay? One more thing. We'll go this way again. Sorry. Okay.
Well, I will say that one of the interesting things about running for offices is making sure that you elect someone who has the experience to get things done. And what makes me unique in this campaign is that I've run and managed large organizations and delivered results to New Mexicans across the board. And I don't need OJT training as your next governor, because I know how to make organizations run, and I can make sure that you all will know that we're going to move New Mexico forward very, very fast.
Thank you. Okay.
There's always something on the list. I'm going to be turning 50 years old this year. So that's kind of 50 for 50, right on. So I'm very done. And last but not least, my mom did grow up here in Las Vegas, and I have some family out of Peñasco. I've been looking at my family history tree, so we're all related in some fashion. Thank you.
Thank you.
2 things for the opportunity, because I always forget something. One is my wife Yolanda is here, and I always forget to introduce her, so I'm pleased that Yolanda is here. She does. I've working 32 years for the U.S. government, helping to keep us safe, and so I appreciate that. And the other thing I'll say, because I only have a few seconds, is that besides all of the other work that I've done in politics, that I'm a saxophone player, and for 15 years had an oldies rock and roll band that played, I'm a saxophone player, played horn section, and played once upon a time a concert with Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
My wife Frances is in the back there. Everybody say hi to Frances. I could. And Francis and I will make New Mexico our home for the rest of our lives. This is where we want to stay for as long as we stay alive. A couple of things I have been working on since I did come to New Mexico. The whole area of social entrepreneurship is very important to me. It's how do you use social change and business practices to make a difference in people's lives. And that's what I've been working on every day in New Mexico since we moved here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm ready to move it forward. Linda, we're going to start with you on this next one, okay? Okay, so we're moving into the topic of education. And the first question is, how will you fundamentally improve education? But let me say a little bit more. Sometimes we have to create disruptive change. We have to usher through a breakthrough. So what risks would you take in this fundamental change to really make a difference in education? Because we all know New Mexico's at the bottom.
2 minutes? 2 minutes?
2 minutes? Okay.
We'll go 2 minutes and then you can come back and respond again.
Thank you. When we talk about education, that is the key to what makes this country great, what makes New Mexico great, what makes our communities great. It is the equalizer of everything that we have available to us. To fundamentally change education, the biggest thing that I have seen in my 18 years in Santa Fe is we don't fund it enough. We don't put enough money in it. We don't value our teachers. When I say that, it's because of the fact we owe money to our teachers. That's a fundamental change to make sure it's not just a 1%, 3% raise. You're looking at something higher, 6 to 10% would be awesome if we could probably work with the legislature. But we have to make sure more money comes in. We have to make sure that for our children to be able to learn, we work with them. We have intervention teachers who are hired to come in. When we talk about changing education, it's not just making and taking a risk to make such a big change, but it's funding, working with, and improving the opportunities that are already there. I've learned a lot with my son going through the public school system. He learns differently than many of our children, as all of us do, very differently. And to be able to work with them, to put in maybe vocational ed back into our schools, to put PE, to put the arts back in, that is a change that would make such an improvement for what we currently have offered for our children. Because if you can't balance the two sides of the brain, then what is the function of education? What is the function of public education? The other requirement, I've introduced a bill, and you can look it up on the legislative website, is to require that all of our children learn 2 languages. Not just Spanish, not just English, but 2 languages or more. Because if you know 2, you're much smarter than those who only know 1. When you travel to Europe, everyone speaks not just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the value of a global economy. And for us to value everyone in this state, there's so much more that we can offer, and I'll add some more to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think the biggest fundamental change that we can make in education, first off, is recognizing the importance of dealing with our children from 0 to 5 years old. And so I've been working with a consortium of organizations for the last 3 years to try and pass a constitutional amendment to fund early childhood education with some of the money that's flowing into our permanent fund, into our land grant permanent fund. And I think that we have seen some people in Santa Fe say that let me say this, we've seen the governor say this, $10 million more for early childhood education is enough. It's not enough. We know that opportunity for our young people is so important at those ages, and so we're talking about $100 million, $110 million, maybe more than that, but that will pay off in the future, and so that's one of the fundamental changes that I've been working for the last 3 years as Attorney General. Another thing that I did, actually when I was in the legislature, one of the things that we know is that the bigger a school district gets, the more children get lost. So I went to school in Moriarty. It was actually a good-sized district. And I guarantee if I was outside of school and getting in trouble, somebody knew about it and told my parents. But when you get in these giant school districts, and the Albuquerque Public School District, for instance, is one of the largest in the country. So I carried legislation when I was in the legislature to break it up into 3 smaller districts. But we should spend the money that it takes to make sure that every middle school has not more than 800 students. we should put the money in to make sure that every class has not more than 30 students. We mandated small class sizes in the legislature a number of years ago, and when the economy got bad, we let that creep up a little bit. But it's one of the most important things, because then teachers can spend time with their students and do something with their students. And most importantly, we have to respect the professionalism of our professional educators and include them in the discussion about how we're going to change our school system and bring them in. And that's something that hasn't been happening. That certainly will happen when I'm the governor.
Well, I think there's no bigger issue in New Mexico or the United States today than answering the question, who runs education and for what purpose? And right now, under Governor Martinez, we're witnessing New Mexico falling prey to being part of the educational industrial complex. And what that does is to take education and turn it into a money-making proposition for folks like Pearson and other industries that don't care about the kids, that care about making money. So the first thing we do to change education is we tell the truth. No Child Left Behind isn't working, and it isn't working for our kids, and New Mexico should stand up and develop its own approach to education. We do need to invest in early childhood. We should be the state that boasts in New Mexico, starting with my administration, education begins before birth. Before birth. We want to work with parents to teach them they are their children's first teachers. Then we invest in respect and reverence for the art of being a teacher. That should be a revered job, and teachers should be treated as professionals with pay that's commensurate with their responsibility and the opportunity for professional development and a chance to advance in a real career. In addition to that, I believe we have to honor and respect vocational education. Higher ed, four-year college isn't for everybody. And the rate at which baby boomers are aging out tells me we need to teach young people to have honorable careers, working with their hands, with the skills that can give them a chance at a good middle-class life in New Mexico. I also believe in investing in something I call a principals academy. We can create a cadre of great principals across New Mexico who will be leaders in every school building, so that the bar is raised and excellence is what we're teaching in every building. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I think one of the major paradigm shifts that we all need to make, not just in New Mexico, I believe across the country, is this whole idea that one size fits all for education. That could be so much, that is not the way we ought to be educating our children. We have to begin to realize that every school district, every community in New Mexico is very unique, and that local school districts and local control is important. The reason we have local school districts and control is because of the uniquenesses of our communities across New Mexico. So this idea that we fund education in Santa Fe, really in a very, in the funding formula, is really I believe, the wrong perspective. We've got to make sure that we realize that we're not producing widgets here. They're human beings, and they all have very different, if you will, skill sets, different issues they bring to schools, etc. The other piece I will tell you that I believe very much in is I believe that we need to have a kitchen cabinet for education. I'm very interested in, when we become governor, that we're going to bring in educators, our unions, our teachers, our administrators, and our parents. And we're going to create an opportunity to have a long-term discussion about investing in, not just in compensation for teachers, and not just in the whole issue of where they stand in terms of social and economic status as other professions, but in real development. Reducing class sizes, so that, again, as someone said here earlier, that's important. Investing in innovation, technology in the schools, because our children learn differently than we all learned when we were in school back in the day. And more importantly, is making sure that we really support professional development in our teachers, so that those teachers who have given their time and their effort to get better at their jobs can help our younger teachers, and those younger teachers can have the skill sets that they need to make sure that we move the system forward. It's about having a comprehensive perspective on education and investing in our teachers so they can make sure they have the best technology and tools available to educate our children across the board.
Thank you. So I think I've got a lot more questions from teachers. So I'm going to read you a couple of We're going to take it down a level now. We're going to go to respect for teachers. Okay? People said things like, teachers feel trampled upon. They feel pushed in the classroom in terms of the evaluation system. So folks want to know, how do you hold the state of New Mexico accountable for how it supports children's schools and teachers? And what are you thinking in terms of teacher evaluations, the whole situation that's going on right now around teacher evaluations? Let's start with Gary.
Well, I would say first off that I do not support the governor's teacher evaluation system. It seems like an easy thing to say, but it doesn't respect the differences in teachers, the differences in schools, the differences in the types of students that they're teaching. We've been working with a group of high school science teachers who really had a good plan for teacher evaluation that was more like the scientific method. It involved peer evaluation from a peer that's in your field, peer evaluation from the teacher that's not in your field, evaluation from the administrator. That's a fair kind of evaluation. So it's not that teachers oppose evaluation. I think that they all feel like it is important to be evaluated in order to move forward. But they want something that relates to their actual skill set and not what a bunch of students do on a standardized exam that was developed by somebody in New Jersey or somewhere like that doesn't understand New Mexico issues, that doesn't understand what we're doing in our schools. And so that's first off. Second off, really important in respecting teachers to have a pay schedule that meets their advancement as they go through their fields. And one of the things I found from these science teachers is one who told me that if he got his PhD in his field in science, that he would only get basically a $5 increase per pay period in his paycheck for doing that. How are we going to encourage people to stay in New Mexico and be great teachers if we don't encourage them to improve their skills and compensate them for improving their skills? So I think that's really important. But, I think that teachers are leaving New Mexico, that great teachers are leaving New Mexico because the plan that we have now that calls for increases for first-year teachers, but nothing for teachers that are further along in their career, something that doesn't recognize their professionalism, something that doesn't give them the opportunity to do what they learn to do, which is to teach young people, as opposed to teaching to the exam. Those are the kinds of things that are really causing great morale problems with our teachers. And if we deal with those issues and respect teachers, I think that we'll have a much better school system.
Thank you.
Most leaders start out with a to-do list. As the next governor, I'm going to start out with a stop-doing list. And at the top of the stop-doing list is the way we're treating teachers and the way we're treating students. We've taken all the joy out of teaching and all the joy out of learning, and it's become a factory job. Education is not a factory job. Education is a preparation for a life skill set that will create citizens for the 21st century. And so we need to rethink the premise, and that's why I say No Child Left Behind has been a disastrous failure. It has taken teaching away from the teachers. It's turned it into a test-giving job. That's not what we want for our teachers or for our children. So that's what we're going to stop doing. I think instead what we need to do is look at the set of skills that kids need going forward. Those are skills that involve things like problem solving, creative thinking, the ability to enjoy play as part of life, the ability to take sensible risks and learn from those risks at school, the ability to bounce back from defeat or failure. These are life skills in the 21st century. We need to focus on that, not filling out little bubbles on standardized tests. So I think we need to change the way we think about education. Obviously, the core of what happens in the classroom is the teacher. And we are losing far too many excellent teachers. Back in the 90s, when I ran a business, we would make a joke that in really poorly run companies, there was a sign that said, "Beatings will continue until morale improves." And that's basically what this governor is doing with our teachers. And that's why the best teachers are the ones bailing out, because they've got great options and they can take their skills somewhere else. We need to make it clear their value, we want them, we'll reward them, and we will respect them.
I want to say that as Democrats, and all of us are good Democrats, we're going to agree on many of these issues. We early childhood education. We agree that this governor is completely wrong-headed in terms of how she is purporting to do reform on education, and what she's really doing is declaring war on education. But here's something that's really important. Linda mentioned earlier the idea of funding. The idea of funding our educational system at the level that it needs to be funded. Now that's a very interesting thought, because here we are in a scenario where we have opportunities to really begin to invest in education in a comprehensive manner. We first need to get back in education, back to the pre-Susana Martinez levels of funding for education. We need to make sure that we fund our educational system at the appropriate level. So when you talk about holding the state accountable, I would tell all of you, as governor, I would certainly want you to hold me accountable for making sure that what I say to you all during the campaign is what I do when I'm governor, number one. Number two is that we need to hold our legislators accountable to make sure that they are making the prioritization, because budgeting and funding is about priorities. Now let me tell you, when I was in the city of Albuquerque and running large organizations, we teamed up with the Bernalillo Public School Systems and the Albuquerque Public School Systems to help fund programs that would help support education. Because you all know as teachers, many educators know that it takes a community to raise a child. Bringing in our local governments, our cities and counties, to be part of the solution is how you build communities and how you help our education system. I have done that through the course of my career, making sure that we're spending taxpayer money wisely by helping build community centers that provide after-school programs for our children, by building libraries that provide opportunities for our children to learn during school, but provide opportunities for the community to use them afterwards. It's about using the taxpayer money wisely, but also making sure that we all hold accountable for what we do and how we spend your dollar.
When we talk about respect for teachers, you have to have the person at the top who begins to say thank you to those who work in our school system. What we currently have with Susana Martinez, there was no respect, first of all, for our state, and she doesn't respect teachers. She doesn't respect those who work in our schools. It's everybody in our schools who makes the system work. What we're currently arguing about now in Santa Fe, currently, as I'm sitting here in the budget, is still the issue of merit pay. No merit pay. No merit pay. I would never support that. We changed it last year. Let's see what House Bill 2 comes out with right now with regards to that budget. That's part of the fight that we have ongoing right now. Do we have merit pay for our teachers? No. That is why I will never ever sign such a bill as governor. The other part that we talk about in respecting and working with our teachers is making sure there's professional development to work with. We talk about the issue on testing. Our students don't fill bubbles anymore. Starting this year, the students have to take PARC assessments. PARC assessments is now on a computer. Our children are no longer filling out bubbles. They have to take a test on the computer. That's a big issue. Talk about that. That's a huge change for our students. How are we working with our teachers to help them become acquainted with the Common Core standards? How that relates now to the PARC assessments? And our children haven't even had keyboarding classes, typing classes when I was in. They're going to be graded on the PARC assessment. Professional development needs to be there for our teachers. We need more time for our students to be able to learn how to keyboard, because you're going to be graded as teachers as to how fast your student can type. Is that fair? No. That's coming starting this year. So hang on. You think Susana Martinez has crushed us? Wait until these reports come out on how successful we are. Thank you.
Just one more quick one. Let's start with you, Gary. Just in terms of, we'll go around one more time on education. And this time, what have you never said before? Something about education that you think is most important for Taoseños to know.
Well, it's a great question. I will say something, and it's not that I've never said this, but one of the things that I really learned a long time ago when I was running for office, I had a friend who's a fourth grade teacher, and she said, "Have you ever spent a whole day in a classroom with a fourth grade teacher?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And she said, "Come and spend a day with me." So I did. I went and spent a day with her, and I said, after one day, I was worn out. I mean, fourth graders, you cannot turn your back on a bunch of fourth graders. So I realized how important it her to have like a teaching assistant and resources and those kinds of things because so it was important. So I have some experience in teaching because when I was a graduate student I taught college students, but it's a whole different experience to teach those young people, and we need to once again recognize that there are people that have that expertise and that they should do that. Today earlier I talked a little bit about us squelching innovation in our students in our schools by trying to turn out every student so that they're just the same, so that they can pass the same exam or whatever. My wife and I are both scientists. We both had mentor teachers when we were young, when we were in middle school, when we were in high school, that generated that enthusiasm and excitement in us for science. And we both, I believe, have used our science for productive purposes to help move our society forward. And I just can't imagine what it will be like if we have a bunch of students who are little robots, basically, who are test-taking robots, rather than students who have that joy of learning, that joy of living, that interest and excitement about science and discovery, and maybe it's music and art and discovery. I mean, it doesn't have to be science, but we're going down the wrong pathway in the path that we're being taken on by Governor Martinez. We have to go back to where New Mexico is a leader in innovation and not a leader in test taking.
Well, something I haven't said from a platform like this before is thank you to Miss Hume, Miss Reese, and Miss Mathis, who were my second, third, and fourth grade teachers. And it's interesting how we all remember teachers who made a huge contribution to our lives, but if we went around the room and said, what boss made the biggest contribution to your life, it would be hard to come up with a name. And so while work is important, actually education is where we all start our lives, and we ought to thank our teachers every day for what they gave us. Second thing I would say is we're talking tonight so far about education as if it all takes place in the classroom and in the school building. And we all know that's not true. If we're really honest, we know that lots of things happen that are educationally vital outside of the building and outside of the classroom. Sometimes they're not good things. Sometimes a kid meets a bully on the way to or from school, and that colors the entire school experience. We ought to be concerned about that. We ought to be concerned about nutrition and health care. We ought to be worried about dental care. Kids who have teeth that they can't learn. Kids who have bellies that are empty can't learn. So education is not just about the classroom or the school. It's a system of looking after our children and making sure that we give them the capacity to succeed in life by looking at them as whole people. And that means doing things like making sure that the school building is safe, but also that we use the school building as a center for delivering other services. For example, at the San Felipe Pueblo, they have a dental care program that lets kids get their teeth checked out on a regular basis so their parents don't have to make separate trips to the dentist. Schools can be a center for all kinds of health and opportunity and well-being in addition to learning.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the unique opportunity to go to a school in Albuquerque and sit down and watch a third grade teacher do her work every day. After about an hour and a half, I got an opportunity to visit with this teacher. And what I learned that day is what I intuitively knew, and that was this. She spent $250 to buy equipment, supplies for her children. She spent a weekend building some platforms so that the kids could play. She had her husband in there putting cardboard boxes up for children. And what I realized was this, is that teachers every day are creating miracles in our classrooms across New Mexico. Teachers are investing their time and their effort in professional development to help our children. And yes, we may sit here and talk about what we need to do to improve education, but one of the things that we all need to also realize is that we have great teachers doing great work in New Mexico. And we need to make sure that we thank them every day for that work. Because I will tell you, I would not be sitting here had it not been for teachers that mentored me when I was a child growing up in that small rural community in northern New Mexico. And that's an important piece of it. The other piece I would say is this. Alan, what you described earlier are called community schools. Those are schools where you bring services to the schools, where you have other things other than just simply medical care. They have social programs and other programs, because one of the things that we know about education and that we see is that we send our children to school every morning, and we expect our teachers to be there, to be their counselors, to be there to educate them, to be there to deal with any other social or other issues. We need to be focused on that our schools are about learning, but there are other opportunities to provide a holistic approach, to a comprehensive approach to education that deals with all the other issues that are associated with education, which is our communities and the issues that our children bring and the issues that we need to deal with. And so I will tell you that I will be a very strong advocate for supporting community schools and bringing the resources to the schools to help our teachers to do their jobs every day.
Thank you.
And ditto, Lawrence, it is called a community school. And those who do need many more of them. When you travel rural New Mexico, you see that the communities involved, and the school is the center of our communities in rural parts. In the larger communities in Albuquerque, we sometimes have more issues, some of our family have more issues, and in Las Cruces. But we have to work smart with our tax dollars. And it is about the whole child. And it's not just the child, it's the home before the child comes from. We need to make sure there are support services. A number that is from AARP, a couple years old, but I bet you the numbers may have gone up. 51% of our grandparents in the state of New Mexico are raising their grandchildren. 51%. So we talk about education. Well, first of all, these grandparents, thank God they are doing that. They are providing a roof, a home for their grandchildren. But there's issues too about how they understand what our educational experiences are, what we expect for the grandparents to work with the students on. For me, what I've done over the few years is introduce and work with a family engagement program. Family engagement to bring our families together to the schools. Some of our families are bilingual, some of them are monolingual in Spanish or maybe in one of the native tongues from our native communities. Bringing them together and working with them. One-on-one, having some of our grandparents and family members coming to learn how to use a computer themselves. Not everybody is as adept as those of us sitting up here at this table. It's involving our families, and family engagement is so important. That is the center, that's the core. And I would challenge anybody in this room to know that when I was in school too, Mom was there. She was able to be there. If there was an issue with a grade or a teacher, Mom was front and center. But most of our families can't do that anymore because they have to work for a living. When we get further into talking about a wage, we have to provide a living wage for our families so they can participate. Thank you.
Alan, you'll be next. Okay, we're going to move from education to economic development. So I'd like you to bridge those two. What is the role of education in economic development, and what the heck is economic development?
Those are two difficult questions.
Well, first of all, I believe that in the 21st century, education and economic development are two terms for the same idea. And that is creating opportunity for people to have a good living, to earn a living where they can put food on the table, take care of themselves and their families, and keep a good, healthy roof over their heads while doing something that they actually want to do that gives them a sense of purpose and mission and value in their lives. I honestly think economic development is probably not a great word. I've never been sitting around a kitchen table with any folks and they say, so how's your economic development doing? They tend to say, do you have a good job? Are you getting a good paycheck? Do you have benefits? Are you doing something that gives you a sense of worth? Is there a future for it? So I think that economic development is a fancy word for talking about creating in New Mexico the opportunity for more people across the state, in every community, urban or rural, to have more choices, more opportunities, a chance to use their education and put it to work to have a good life. Right now, unfortunately, what we're seeing is too many people are leaving New Mexico. Too many of our children are voting with their feet. And instead of putting down their roots, they're pulling up their stakes and leaving the state. And that is because they do get a good education, but there's not enough opportunity to put that education to work right here in New Mexico. We want to keep opportunity alive in New Mexico, and that means grassroots jobs rooted in communities where people know what's best for them. The current government believes that the best way to create jobs is to give tax breaks to out-of-state corporations and bribe them to come into New Mexico. That's a bankrupt trickle-down strategy. My view is we grow New Mexico from our own strengths, and that's what I'll do when I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence.
Well, I would say to all of you that economic development is about education. We need to invest in our most precious resource, which is our children. But we also need to invest in our adults. I'm a big advocate for adult education as well, and giving our adults an opportunity. Because let me tell you a story. I was down in the southern part of New Mexico, and I was talking to this elderly gentleman who was telling me about his children. They dropped out of high school. And we looked out the window and he said, you know what those three boys have in common? They dropped out of high school, they have 3 kids, and those children look to them as their mentors. We need to make sure that we invest in our adults as well, and make sure that we give our adults an opportunity to get back a GED or some kind of diploma so they can get out and get good jobs, because our children need mentors, especially in our rural areas, in areas where we don't have the economic development that needs to happen. But unlike other folks who talk about what they believe in, I will tell you what I have done. I have helped recruit companies into New Mexico. I've helped grow small businesses in New Mexico by providing them the opportunity to expand and grow. When we were with the Green Chamber, and we talked about buying local campaigns, creating opportunities for small businesses to have the ability to grow their small businesses and employ local folks. Remember, every dollar spent in the local community stays in the local community, and that helps our education system. That helps make sure that our communities will grow. But we also have to invest in infrastructure. We have to make sure that we invest in the very basic infrastructure that we need so that communities can continue to survive. And that means infrastructure, water and sewer lines. That means roads. That means community centers and after-school programs so that we can make sure that these communities can stay viable. The other piece is make sure that we work together to bring all our resources, our unique resources, to our communities. Again, that's why I'm so proud of the Rio Grande del Norte National Monument, which we worked on. That's local jobs in this part of New Mexico, using New Mexico's assets to the best of our ability to create a better life for everyone.
Thank you. When we talk about what we need and how we improve our economy here in the state of New Mexico, it does go back to education and what it is currently that's ongoing with our system. As many of you have heard, our seniors are going to be graduating. They either get a certificate of completion or a diploma. That's based on the new testing processes that this governor and Ms. Candera have in place. Talking to a high school senior, she told me, why should I finish? If I don't pass that ed course exam, I'm not going to get a diploma. I'm just going to get a certificate of completion. I'm leaving. When we take hope away from our young people, when we take hope away from them, they're our future. When we take that hope, which is currently happening right now, that is when we have to make that change. Changing the attitude changes what's here. That's the first part about education and what it has an effect on. The other part is that, yeah, some of our young people are lazy, but what opportunities do we have locally that we can begin to change? It's called internship programs. We can work with local government, with local businesses to see how we offer these opportunities for our young people. I was in Las Cruces just before session started, talking to some parents who were angry because their son had to go to Tucson to find just a part-time internship program to get some work experience that he could put on his resume. He just graduated from New Mexico State University. New Mexico has to look and find how to work with local government, businesses, any place we can start immediately, which can happen, and I will be working on that, is to provide opportunities so our young people have something for their resume. You know, my background is in HR development. It's the soft skills that you hire. They have to show up to work on time, look professionally dressed, learn those basic tools. That's what our young people need to have. Those are things we can help them with. It's part of what goes on that resume. The other part is about working with our young people who may have dropped out. Adult basic education is right on. But we too have changed that GED. again, nationally associated with the park system. There's so much of this education system that this governor has put us into that we have to change because it's too expensive for people to go get. It's not even a GED anymore. That has to change, and it will change with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks. I'll start off by saying that, I mean, in simple terms, in my head, I think that a good economy means everybody has a good job. And interestingly enough, we don't have that in New Mexico right now. And with virtually zero job growth, we don't have the opportunity for people to get good jobs. But I think as we recovered from this last recession from 2008 on, we have what they call sometimes the jobless recovery, but more often what it really looks like is that people lost jobs that were decent paying jobs and have come back into the workforce in minimum wage kind of jobs just to try and take care of their families. And so we need to focus in New Mexico on making sure that we're developing an economy that has jobs so that every person, if they work hard at one job for 40 hours a week, that they make enough money so that they can indeed buy food for their family, send their children to school, put a roof over their head, maybe even have a little money left over for a vacation to Disneyland. I mean, I think that we all aspire to not just be working all the time just to make ends meet. And so we have to do that. So one of the important things, of course, is dealing with the minimum wage. That we have to have a minimum wage that is more like in 2014, like what people were making in 1989 or whatever. I mean, the minimum wage is not increased at a manner that gives us that opportunity for those kind of jobs. Now, with regard to education, I think that it's so important. We have a model here in New Mexico that we should follow. That's in the movie industry. We know that we have a pretty robust movie industry here. Some of that comes from tax cuts, but a lot of that comes because we have, in our university system here now, we're training people for jobs in the movie industry. And so people that want to make movies here know that there is a workforce here that's trained and ready to go for that. When I was in the legislature, I helped develop something called the Center for High Technology Materials Research at the University of New Mexico. That was to train young people to work in those new technological materials, because if you build it, they will come. If we have students that are graduating that have skills for those new high technology jobs, we will be able to recruit those high technology industries here.
Thank you. Okay. What's your position on a minimum wage versus a living wage, immigration, and how New Mexico is based on a military economy?
Well, first of all, my position is that we need a living wage in New Mexico. We need to make sure that New Mexicans are able to raise their families and pay for what they need to survive on a day-to-day basis. There's no question about a living wage is what I would support, and I think we have to get this done. And I would hope and encourage Linda and all of our colleagues in Santa Fe, in the Senate, in the House, to make sure they put that on the ballot this next November, because that is important for New Mexico. Secondly, I will tell you that I believe that immigration is a very, very important issue for New Mexico. And I will tell you, one of my frustrations with this current governor is the lack of, if you will, advocacy on behalf of New Mexico in Washington, D.C., to ensure that the Congress, especially members of our own party, would move forward with a comprehensive immigration reform package that helps begin to deal with the issues that we all know are important, especially as a border state. So you would have a governor in me that would be making sure that we work hard on immigration reform, because it's important for New Mexico, it's important for our small communities, especially because we are a border state, and because we need to make sure that we move that issue forward in a very comprehensive manner. I was a big opponent to what was happening before, when you had the governor of Arizona creating her own plan, the governor of Texas with their own plans. We are a United States. We need to have a united approach to this very, very important issue. And the last thing I would tell you is that we need to diversify New Mexico's economy. We are very much dependent on federal government spending, but we need to do that methodically. We cannot just expect the federal government to begin to cut and shut down New Mexico's economy, because, quite frankly, for many, many years, New Mexico has benefited from the federal government spending here. But it's important we begin to diversify our economy and make sure that we do it in a way that doesn't shut down New Mexico, and by the same token, we create plans that are regional in nature to create a new economy. For example, the energy sector using renewable energy and those sort of issues to really help us diversify the state's economy.
The issue on immigration has come up in front of the legislature, the issue on driver's license for undocumented residents. I have voted against that bill every time that this governor has brought it back. Every time. We must continue to divide and conquer our communities. What has happened is when that is dropped in the middle of our communities, we begin to fight one another. Those of us who are for, those of us who are against, it takes us off the focus of what is not happening in the state of New Mexico. It's very smart political thinking. I'm voting against that and will veto that if that was ever to come in my desk, on my desk, it would be vetoed. Second of all, and to continue on the issue of immigration, we have to work with our congressional delegation to make sure that we support. We still have the two Republican governors on either side of us, but we can be a beacon of light in this sea right here. We can take care of it and say what we support. And maybe convince them, we'll see. We can continue to work on that. When we talk about the issue of minimum wage, we just passed, and I voted for it, and I've always voted for it, a Senate joint resolution, which if it comes out of the House in the next week, we get to vote on it. It'll be a constitutional amendment that we can all vote and say yes. It's a minimum wage that I think would average out to about $8.60 per hour. That's what it is at this point. But for a livable wage, even at the state government level, we have to pay our state workers a livable wage. We have state employees and teachers who still go and qualify for food stamps, for all of that. That is where, as governor, I can have an impact and will make an impact to make sure all of our employees, as a role model, we have to start at the state government too. Thank you.
We've got 2 minutes to answer all of those questions. That's pretty interesting. So I'm going to start at the end and work my way backwards. With regard to diversification of our economy, when I was at the Department of Energy, I was what was called the Director of the Office of Worker and Community Transition. It was my job for about 18 months to help communities develop new jobs, new high-tech jobs, to take over for the fact that they were downsizing Department of Energy facilities in a number of states. We in New Mexico, interestingly enough, didn't downsize at the same rate as everybody else because Pete Domenici and Jim Bailey were so strong that we didn't lose funding at the rate that they did in other states. But I work with 100,000 DOE employees around the country and with facilities where there have been significant downsizing to help them develop the infrastructure, both human infrastructure and physical infrastructure, to develop new jobs to take the place of those jobs that were being lost as they downsize those facilities. So I have actual experience in working to help communities develop to take the place of those federal jobs as they leave. And so that's something that I bring to the table. With regard to immigration, I want to say that one of the problems that we've had is this demonization of immigrants, and that we somehow or another try and, I shouldn't say we, I should say they, there are organizations out there that want us to think that somehow or another they are less than human beings. And I think that's the wrong place to start. I think that we have to recognize that there are reasons why people come to this country. And frankly, I'm a prosecutor for a living, and so I recognize that if people are coming to this country with the intent of committing a crime or leaving a crime, that we should deal with them harshly and deal with them. But there are a lot of people that come to this country because they want to have a job, because they want to have a better life, because they want to contribute to society, and we should have ways to do that. And so the answer in 15 seconds with regard to minimum wage is I support an increase in the minimum wage, and I think that there are clever ideas that we can have that would deal with that issue of minimum wage versus living wage. But there are people that are going into jobs that have 20 years of experience that are now having to go into minimum wage jobs, and that's just not right.
Thank you.
Very quickly, I support an increase in the minimum wage. I think we need to make it $10.10, and I think we need to make that a stepping stone to a living wage. I think it's a shame when we have working men and women having to take 2 and 3 jobs in order to have enough money to live on. That is completely wrong, and we need to fix it. That's how you deal with poverty, is you give people money that they earn through their hard work. On the question of immigration, I think immigration, as Gary said, is not the right word. When I think of immigration, I don't think of a label, I think of people. I think of 2 Dream Act kids I met in Las Cruces, whose stories were both heartwarming and heartbreaking. These kids are working hard to get a great education, and they want to make a life in this state, and we ought to embrace them. We ought to make it possible for them to make a contribution through their education to make New Mexico a diverse and healthy state. I think diversity is what New Mexico is all about. It's what we've always been about, and we should celebrate it. I think this idea of taking away people's driver's license is a complete waste of political time and energy. We are much safer when people have driver's licenses, and people of all kinds need to take their kids to school and get to their jobs. It's completely a waste of time and money and attention. As the issue comes of pivoting on the economy, we have been very fortunate, and we've benefited from federal jobs and federal support, with the labs, with the military, with lots of good things that have come from Washington, D.C. We ought not to turn our back on that. One of the things that this governor has been very inadequate at is working with our congressional delegation to continue those relationships and to build them. And I believe we should do that as part of our legacy and part of our future. At the same time, we ought to embrace both tradition and transition. And that means opening up entrepreneurial opportunities across the state, in rural and urban New Mexico, to build new jobs that are private sector based and teach our kids that they can create their own jobs in the future.
I realize it's a short time, but I do want to open the questions from the audience. So this is the last question that I'll ask from the podium. I think that's time. You know, with Citizens United and money in politics, life is really tough. And we know that Suzanne Martinez has some money behind her. And we also know that she's currently in office. And I just want to say that we're honored to have you here, and we're honored to have you all here as Democrats, and whatever happens in March, June, November, don't give up. Okay? Because we need to keep working really hard. That said, in the political climate today, why and how are you going to beat Suzanne Martinez? And why should all of those good people get behind you?
First and foremost, I have a heart. I agree with that. Second of all, I am Hispana, she is Hispana. And let's don't fool ourselves. The governor won because she's a Hispanic woman. We know the politics of New Mexico. We understand how the numbers work across our state. To challenge, when you're working in this battle, this is not just something fun. This is a battle for New Mexico's future, for what's going to take care of our communities, and especially of our children and grandchildren. In battle, you look for your opponent's munition pile, wherever it may be, and you take out whatever extra firepower, whether it be, whatever it is you're looking in the war. I neutralize Suzanne Martinez. She's the only Hispanic woman elected in this country as governor. If I'm honored to be her nominee, there's 2 Hispanic women running for governor in this country. It's new history making for our state, history making for this country. Talk about the energy that brings in. Talk about what that does to say, wow, we have an opportunity. And if I'm honored, we have, of course, our person who will be our lieutenant governor. If I'm honored to be there, just think of us 2 women of color running for the executive positions in our state. That's an opportunity. It brings an excitement from outside of our state. It brings in a whole new group of people to say, wow, that's the energy that I bring. That's the energy that we bring to the table, and we bring the governorship back. I have heart, I have brain, I have experience in the legislature. I'm a single mom, you know, single moms do a lot. We're multitaskers. I'm dad to my son, I'm mom to my son, I provide a living for them. Those are the gifts that you can bring that I bring to the table. I've worked with the legislature, both sides of the aisle. You're not a chairman for 13 years if you can't work with people in the legislature. I've dealt with Governor Richardson, respectfully, but I've challenged him too. It's about respect for our people. That's what I will bring to the table, to make sure we deserve the respect, and we will get it. I'm a hard worker. If you don't think so, watch me. Thank you.
Well, I'll start, since I do have scientific training, I'll start with sort of the theoretical premise and then explain why I think I'm the best candidate I'm supposed to do this. But essentially, in order to win the governorship in New Mexico, the Democratic Party needs to present a candidate to Democrats that they're proud to go out and vote for and that they know will represent their values and their interests and such, because we lost a lot of Democrat voters 4 years ago in the election. Secondarily, we need a candidate that appeals to independent voters, because we continue to have more and more independent voters. And those are the voters that look a lot at the issues and where they are on the issues. And I think that they make their decisions based on their economic circumstances, their how we do with education. They're more issue oriented. And third, it's good to be able to pull some moderate Republicans, because we have a governor right now who is so right-wing and so dedicated to the Koch brothers and such, that I think that there are a lot of Republicans in New Mexico that are ready for a change and ready for something different. So what I present is what I think that the voters are hungry for, which is a candidate of substance, somebody who has a lot of experience in government, which I do, who has experience in the private sector, which I do, who understands the issues and can speak with some authority on the issues, and somebody who, in my case, where I'm different than the other candidates, who has won 2 statewide elections in the last 2 election cycles. They voted for me twice. I believe the voters will vote for me again. There were about 315,000 New Mexicans that voted for me in the last election cycle. There were about 317,000 that voted for Governor Martinez. But so for me, the key is to hold those 315,000 voters, because it means that she won't get it. So, I am a commodity that people know. When you see Gary King, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get good, honest government. And I think that people are hungry for a candidate of substance, and a candidate that they know is not for sale, and a candidate that will represent their interests and not the interests of the business.
I think what Democrats want in November more than anything else is to win. We cannot stand 4 more years with Susana Martinez, or we will have a future that is so bleak we may never find our way out. I think we all know we need to make her a one-term governor. Why am I the best person to do it? My background is as an entrepreneur. For the last 30 years, I've worked at creating jobs, building jobs, helping other companies and organizations create good jobs. Some people look at a circumstance like New Mexico, where we're number 50 in so many categories, and they see problems. Entrepreneurs see opportunities, and that's the vision I bring to this state. There's a new way of thinking about our future. There's a new way of connecting the dots so that we actually see opportunities across the state in all of our rural and urban communities to see a different future. Now, in tactical terms, Susana Martinez's weaknesses are my strengths. She has 0 job growth. I know how to create jobs and build jobs across the state. I know what it means to grow companies and pay people for their contribution. That's what I've done for 30 years. I know how to make the economy grow. She has been an absolute failure as the CEO of New Mexico. She has hired poor people in her cabinet. She's not been accountable. She's not held accountable. She's been a bad administrator. My background in running a business and growing a business is being a strong leader, building teams, pulling people together, working across all kinds of different points of view to create an opportunity to build something that really works. And finally, she ran for office as somebody who would be against corruption and for transparency. She is the most corrupt CEO we've had in New Mexico. This is my first race for governor. My track record is clean. I am a man of integrity. You can check it out. I am not somebody who has ever taken any kind of illegal gifts or curried favor with any group. I'm the perfect opponent for Susana Martinez.
Thank you.
Let me tell you why I'm the best candidate for governor. It's because today, Susana Martinez is not the governor of New Mexico. Jay McCluskey is the governor of New Mexico. Jay McCluskey's political operative is running state government. And let me explain to you. When you have a governor who has given the responsibility to a non-state employee to manage and be the gatekeeper, this is what you get. You get political government. You don't get government that provides results and helps New Mexico move forward. Let me say that one of the big concerns that I have with this governor is that it's on-the-job training. She absolutely knows nothing about how to make things happen and how to work government. She spends her time as a prosecutor. She finds a problem, blames someone, but never goes to the next step, which is finding a solution to the issues that we have in New Mexico. And I've spent 35 years working in various capacities across New Mexico, running large organizations like the city of Albuquerque, being held accountable there by the media and the public. You don't run the city for 12 years and not make a decision in the morning and know that by noon someone's going to be holding you accountable. I don't need OJT. I know how to get things done for managing large projects and large organizations. But here's another point. I've lived in New Mexico and worked in many other capacities across the state. You have to know the people of New Mexico. You have to know the communities. And you have to get people to work together. Because nobody can move any issue forward unless you bring people together. I've done that all my life. And if you all thought about the New Mexico Railroad Express, the largest transit project in the state's history, it was about bringing all of these organizations, Native American communities, all the other communities, 19 jurisdictions to work together. That is a clear example of my ability to work with people to make great things happen for New Mexico. I'm the best candidate for governor because I know New Mexico, I'm from northern New Mexico, and I will tell you this. I will bring out northern New Mexico, I will bring out Democrats because I know that when they see my record, they will believe in my abilities to get things done, and I will bring pride back to New Mexico so that your family, your children are proud to be New Mexicans just like I am and be good Democrats.
Would anyone like to ask a question? Folks, if you could come up, turn on the mic here. And just, if it's directed at one candidate, say their name and let them know if it's to all of them or any of them.
You can take the mic out of there.
Actually, it's to all of you who have some questions, 2 questions on water. But I would like to start by thanking each of you because listening to each one of you, I am proud to be in there. And part of it is I've been an educator, a school psychologist for over 30 years, and I've worked in the villages, and believe me, you don't see the wealthy people of this nation have 30 kids in their classroom. Research shows that you should have 15 or less. But the water question comes.
Yes. I know it's exciting.
The water question, the first one is, I'm the secretary of the board for the Upper Aurora Condo Mutual Domestic Water Consumer Association. We have uranium in our water, and the EPA put mandates on, and the state put mandates on that we take the uranium off. In 2011, there were 3 stomach cancers in our village, with just 66 members were in the upper village. And 2 of them died within days of being diagnosed. This is a serious thing. We went from being a community well to being a mutual domestic because the state is gradually moving them all over to mutual domestics. That means we have the same paperwork. We have to have the same knowledge as Albuquerque or Santa Fe or Taos. We're not paid people, just like the Congress of the state isn't paid. We are volunteers in our little community.
Questions?
Okay. What I'm concerned about is now the Water Trust Board has just gone from 120 applicants that were accepted, only, I think it was 20 or 30. I did call somebody's office, and that was on the board. And a member of that board that was really precious to Taos County has been thrown off. That's Trudy Healy. But we're in it saying that we're not going to get help because we're a small mutual domestic. We need help. And the other question, so, I really want to know how you stand on water. Okay.
What's your question?
I want to know how you stand on helping the small mutual domestics. The other question that involves Taos County, and this is a short one, I promise you.
Just the question, Pam.
We have a subdivision that is now going to be 37 little places with swimming pools at a time when we have a drought and the state engineer is allowing this. It's going before the county on the 18th if anybody wants to be there. We have
Question.
Why aren't they becoming a municipal water district? Why are they getting individual wells? Why are they getting that privilege? And why are they getting swimming pools?
Which one would be the life saver? Water. Okay, Linda.
2
The
minutes.
issue when you talk about water is so precious to the state of New Mexico. And yes, with Trudy Healy being kicked off the Water Trust Board, we just recognized her in the legislature a few days ago for all of the work that she's done. And with her leading, we now have a leading whole. And part of that is just the information that was available to us to be able to access as to what is happening with the Water Trust Board, which is a very important board. It's gone through my committee for appointments and confirmations. What has happened at this point in time needs to be changed. And with who we have currently as a state engineer and the other support staff is going in the wrong direction.
Yes.
That has to change, and that can only be changed when we change the governor. Because right now, what is in there, that those who are part of the commission have a whole different perspective as to what we talk about water in New Mexico. The Water Trust Board is entrusted with taking care of the water, making sure that we have distribution. The state engineer also has worked with our acequias, all the adjudication of water rights across the state. There's still so much work to be done. And when you have the allowances of this, it comes on this new paperwork that comes in when you were just saying that instead of the usual smaller opportunities to qualify for monies and assistance, now you have about a 3.5-page list that you have to go through. And for those of you who are in a smaller community that don't have the money, that leaves you out. That is what has to change.
2 years worth of work.
Yes.
2 years.
Yes, and that has to change. But again, that's in the direction of Governor Martinez, through the state engineer, on down. So that is where we have to make a change. The legislature will try, but guess who holds the purse strings?
Thank you. Anyone else like to respond? Okay, Gary.
Yes, here's one where I'm sort of uniquely qualified. As I said, I was an environmental lawyer and worked for an environmental engineering company as a scientist and a lawyer before I became the Attorney General. And you actually have a problem that is very nearly the one that I dealt with when I was in the legislature during that period. We, as you might know, we have a lot of arsenic in our water in a lot of places in New Mexico. And when the federal government set new arsenic standards, there were a lot of small water systems that didn't meet the arsenic standards anymore and didn't have the money to build a treatment plant to treat for arsenic. And so we actually worked and developed a fund in New Mexico where we accessed some federal funding and we appropriated money from the legislature to create a fund to help small communities and small water systems to treat for arsenic. So first off, we ought to look at that fund and see if there's any money left and we can use it for uranium. But secondarily, if it's not, we should work with the EPA and with federal funding agencies to get the money so that we can help you guys treat the water. So that's number one. Number two, I don't know why you have uranium in your water, but I will tell you that we are battling with the administration currently over something that they call is that open pit mines, and including potentially the one that you have in your neighborhood here, be allowed to inject polluted water directly into the groundwater underneath their mines, and with the promise that if it ever gets to the edge, they'll clean it up. Well, guess what? I mean, when it gets to the edge, they're going to go out of town, they're going to go bankrupt, they're going to do something, we're going to start with the cleanup, but it pollutes water for people like you, because once you get those heavy metals in your water, it's very expensive to clean them up. So we're battling to make sure that they can't allow these big businesses to continue to pollute the water. And I don't know if your uranium is naturally occurring or if it comes from some area, but New Mexico has both of those issues because we have uranium. So I think that we could work to do those. And so if you'll contact my office, this is not me running for governor. If you'll contact my office, I'll have my environmental group look at it and see what we can do to help.
Thank you.
I appreciate you raising the issue because I think it really speaks to a set of things that we need to be aware of. Number one, water. Whenever you travel around New Mexico, water is the issue that ties us all together. It is New Mexico's most precious resource, and it speaks to both quality of water and quantity of water. And right now, we are being outplanned by other states. We are being out-information by other states. We are being outstaffed by other states, and frankly, we're being outthought by other states about how to deal with this precious resource. Quality comes first. We have to take care of the water we have. We don't have water to waste. Quantity is also important. We cannot create more water. And so conservation and the wise use of the resource we have is incredibly important. It's something we ought to make a high priority. And as Linda mentioned, I think the issue of who is the state engineer and what the mandate of the state engineer is of vital importance. And lastly, I would say in general, we need a governor who actually believes that the environment is not something that's out there. The environment is where we live. The environment is New Mexico. The environment is our quality of life. It's a sustainable way of life. And if we treat it as an externality, and we let companies treat it as an economic externality, we are making a huge mistake in terms of our most precious resource, which is New Mexico's quality of life, water, air, the land. And it all needs to be cherished and treated not as an economic value, but as part of our legacy and what makes New Mexico so special. So as governor, I think we need a very different perspective, and then we need to implement different policies and approaches to working with local communities and across the state to deal with water, air, and land as absolutely essential to our future and our local community.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, let me just say this. We have talked about this over and over again. Every time we have a drought, we have a discussion about water. My administration will create a water department, and we'll bring all the agencies in state government that deal with water and create a comprehensive water policy for the state of New Mexico. A policy that looks at conservation, looks at use of water and reuse of water, and then we begin to do something on a very substantive matter to deal with water issues. I happen to have some experience. Back in the day when I was a city manager of Albuquerque, we started the first major water conservation program in New Mexico. We worked with the city and with city employees and with our citizens of Albuquerque. And today I'm happy to tell you that we reduced water use in Albuquerque by 30%. Why? Because we spent focus on water. But I also tell you that I understand the issue that this lady just brought up, because my brother runs a little small mutual domestic. And what we need to do is we need to provide the infrastructure and the support to these small organizations so that they can work on those issues and get the support they need from state government. But let me tell you, if we don't work on a comprehensive water program across the board in New Mexico, and if you don't have someone who understands how to get that done, we're going to continue to have this conversation over and over. It's time to stop the conversation. It's time to stop thinking about the theoretical things about policy, and it's time to get a state plan that really looks at conservation in a holistic manner and really deals with the water and the water issues that we have.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take two more questions. We have Abby and Jim, and then I'm going to, oh my goodness, we have more. How long did you guys stay? Just keep going. I want to use the restroom. Yeah, okay, how about a minute to respond? We'll do 2 or 3 more questions, and then I'm going to usher you guys off the stage so people can ask you directly. Okay, sounds all right? All right. Patty.
Mine is a yes or no.
Okay.
The University of New Mexico is governed by a board of regents. The governor appoints that board. It's no secret that for the last many years, the board of regents has been not the greatest. Would you look at that situation and think about who you want to be governing the University of New Mexico?
Yes or no?
The answer is yes, I would look at that and I would appoint people that take into consideration the work the university has, its role in our economic development, and its role in our education programs, and make sure the people that represent us, the citizens on that board, are people that will support the university, grow the university, and make decisions so that our professors and the folks who do the work there are supported every day, and that we don't make it a political football like it's been in the last couple of years. Absolutely.
The way the process works, whoever is appointed now is serving for a certain period of time. When the governor comes in, you cannot just ask someone to leave. So you still have to wait out some of the appointees. That was determined by Dennis versus Johnson, back when Governor Gary Johnson was in office. But those that I will appoint will have a heart for the student and a heart for the employees. The way that our higher ed system is going right now is not the way it needs to be going. And it needs change, and we need regents who are there, not because of politics, but because of their commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry, you want to respond?
Well, you put your finger on a point, which is one of those important reasons that you think about who you elect the governor, because they appoint judges, they appoint regents, all of those kinds of things. I think that that's appropriate. I think that that people elect a governor to carry out their policies. My wife and I both are graduates of the University of New Mexico. We both have advanced degrees. I think that it's important to have a governor that recognizes that you should think about who you put on the board of regents, and that they should make sure that those are quality institutions. So the answer is yes.
Thank you.
When the question came up earlier about the link between education and economic opportunity, we didn't talk about universities, but we should. The fact is, great economies have great universities. You look around the United States, communities where there's growth, opportunity, entrepreneurship, and innovation, the driving force in those communities is the university. And so, as the next governor, I will put a huge priority on making sure that our universities and schools of higher education are absolutely focused on excellence and on creating students and faculty who can create opportunities for entrepreneurial beginnings, technology, science, the things that are the 21st century jobs. It is not that universities are job factories, but the learning that goes on there and the excellence that we foster has to be the kind of work that creates opportunity. So I would absolutely focus on that as a key job as governor.
Okay, the next question.
Okay, my name is Mary Trujillo Mascareñas, and I'm involved in many things, so I've seen you and know you from different areas. But my question is, there's a lot of our people in Taos County who are employed within town in Albuquerque, Rio Rancho. And as of today, we know that over 200 more people will be laid off in March. They have been laying off 500, 400, and keeping on and sending jobs to India. What do you intend to do to bring companies, businesses to New Mexico so that people can be employed?
We're going to do 1 minute, okay? Who wants to start? Okay, Gary.
Well, one, I have to say, last year the government gave significant tax cuts to large corporations with the idea that it was going to keep jobs in New Mexico. And you're right. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Intel has been laying people on. We obviously are not doing what we need to do to encourage people to have jobs here already, to keep jobs here, nor to encourage business to bring in jobs that will deal with that. So I think that we have to change our approach. I think that we actually should sit down with Intel and point out to them, and I've worked with Intel a lot over the years in my capacities, that we did have basically a compact with them. I mean, that we gave them some tax breaks a long time ago that encouraged them to come here and all of that, and that we expect them to be good corporate citizens in New Mexico, and we expect them to think about what the impact is on New Mexico, not just on their bottom line when they make those decisions. We could talk a lot more than a minute about what we do to encourage those same kinds of companies to come in, but it's not just tax breaks. It's a whole theory of providing them with quality people to be in their businesses, with good infrastructure, with all those kinds of things that we have to do. So we can bring those kinds of businesses to Mexico. We've done it before, but we're not doing it now.
I think it goes back to the conversation we were just having about higher education. Companies want to go where the action is. Companies want to go where the future is. Companies want to go where the talent is and where the opportunity is. If we invest in education, if we invest in training, if we invest in technology, if we harvest the stuff that we already have here through the last 30 and 40 years of federal investment in the labs and the military and our schools, we can become the next place where companies want to be. But you don't do it by bribing them through tax cuts. You do it by making it so attractive because there's so much good stuff going on, whether it's about water technology and management, whether it's about alternative energy and solar, things that play to our strengths because we have a sustainable economy. Then we're doing it on the ground in our local communities, and companies and startups want to be there because that's where the future is. We can't bribe our way to the future. We have to grow and invest our way to the future by being excellent at what we do.
Let me just say, I happen to know a little bit about what's happening in Intel because my wife was a former Intel employee, so I totally understand that this company is important to the economy of central New Mexico. And many, many people across New Mexico benefit from that company being here. But let me tell you this, when this governor was elected governor, before she took office, she had an opportunity to sit with the CEO of Intel and talk about how important Intel is to New Mexico. This governor decided to take a trip to the National Republican Governors Association to get an award and not go visit with Intel and talk about their investment in New Mexico. That's how out of touch she was with what was happening in New Mexico, and she still is. What I would do is I would take a delegation of business people and others and community leaders from all over New Mexico and have a conversation with the Intel CEO about the commitment that New Mexico made to keep them in New Mexico and about their responsibility and their commitment to New Mexico families, and work hard and be aggressive in supporting them, because that is the only way that we are going to work our way into diversifying this economy, by having a government who's proactive, goes out there and works with people to attract them to New Mexico. We have a great state, we have great employees and great people, but we need to make sure that our government is out there working every day to ensure that economic development occurs in the state, and we will work hard in my administration to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Thank you. We need a governor who believes in New Mexico, first of all. When you have a leader who's there at the top that talks so negative on our state, why would I, as a business owner, a larger company, want to even come into New Mexico? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Remember that in college? If you think bad, guess what happens? You become that. It's part of that visioning process that we have to change, and it starts at the top with the governor. You do need to be aggressive, you need to be assertive, to sit down and say, we are a wonderful state, we have a lot to bring to the table. Our education system is not hopeless. Our education system is good. It always has to be tweaked and worked upon. Our people are wonderful, we are resourceful, we can work with and train, which is what our community colleges are for, to help you working on that. There's so many things that we can help, but I will tell you, on that tax break that we voted on in the legislature this last year, and it has not created jobs. Trickle down economics doesn't work. I voted no on that bill, because that is not what we do with our precious tax dollar. We don't give it away.
We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to close.
Straight up political question. There's 5 people running for the Democratic nomination for governor. The 4 of you have been here tonight. You all seem outstanding to me. It makes me proud to be a Democrat. I thank you all for coming. But we're facing long odds based on just on funding. What I want to know is, will each of you support the ultimate nominee, whoever the nominee is after our primary, including letting your folks know, all the folks that supported you, actively campaigning for whoever the Democratic nominee is, and even help him raise some money, because that's what it's going to take.
Good question.
I'll start. I'll say yes, I will. As I said, this is about New Mexico taking back New Mexico. I will work hard. If I'm not the nominee, I'm going to work hard for that one. I will work very much in my district and across the state because we have to win this. If not, I can't even imagine what we're going to turn into in 4 years. Thank you.
The short answer, we have to win. We have to be Democrats. We have to work together. When I ran for Attorney General the first time, I had two opponents. The next morning after the election, they both endorsed me. It's one of the reasons I got to be the Attorney General. I will certainly extend that same courtesy to anyone on this panel, including Senator Morales as well. They all have to work together. We have to support each other. We have to help each other raise funding together. That's really important.
I think we all know that when Democrats vote in New Mexico, Democrats win in New Mexico. And we have to work together in this upcoming election to make sure that any and all of our supporters help any and all of us win in November. This is a race for the future of New Mexico, and we're all in it together as candidates, but also as good Democrats and as very good New Mexicans. So the answer is yes, I'm all in, all the way. We've got to win in November.
The obvious answer to that question is absolutely. We need to be united as a group. And I look forward to having Alan Weber be my finance chair, and having Gary King help me with my policy, and making sure that Linda helps me out there in northern New Mexico and all over New Mexico. But seriously, this is about fighting for the future of the state. And we know that the only reason Susana Martinez was elected governor is because Democrats did not vote for Democrats. And we need to make sure that we all stay together. All of us here have made a commitment. I want to make sure you all have a commitment that you will vote for Democrats because we